Hello and welcome to tonight's edition of the Hughes at 10. And sorry, Elizabeth. She says, "Where are you?" And I'm like, I'm here. I'm right here. I was just waiting for someone to write in what they'd like to talk about tonight. And then I went back up the messages, and one of them was from Elizabeth saying, "Let's talk about the removal of freedom of movement," which is actually something that I was thinking of talking about. So let's dive straight into there. I'll come on to Trump and UBI and Brexit for a No, I'm going to talk about Brexit. Well, no, look, let's talk a little bit about my experiences of traveling to every country in the world without flying, because this is pretty unique. I'm the only person so far who has crossed over every single border in the world on the ground, so on foot or on a train or on a bus. Normally, it would require me to get off the train or bus, get processed, and then come across the border. And obviously, when I was up in the Andes Mountains, crossing over in the Atacama Desert from Bolivia to Chile, with a splitting headache in this dusty mountain checkpoint, I honestly wasn't standing there in the queue thinking, "Oh, do you know what would be brilliant if it was like this when we went on a weekend away to Prague or to Barcelona or to Paris?" I honestly wasn't thinking that. And so many times I'd be standing there, me backpack on, and I'd have me laptop bag, and I'd have my camera bag on me, be loaded down on my shoulders, and just thinking, "Oh my God, like this is the way the rest of the world operates." Latin America, all of Africa, pretty much, all of Central Asia and East Asia and Southeast Asia. You cross a border and you've got to put a day aside, to be honest with you, to just get all the formalities done. The two worst places for getting around that sort of lack of freedom of movement. First of all, West Africa. So if you're coming down from Europe, anyone who's read my book should know about this story. But if you want to go from Morocco into Western Sahara, that's no problem, because Morocco invaded Western Sahara in like the 70s or something. So they regard it as one country. So that's fine. And you get to the southern border with Mauritania. Now, Mauritania had a war, or they'll have a border skirmish, I don't know, with Morocco and Western Sahara. They have a claim over Western Sahara, as has Algeria, as has the Western Saharans. That's why, if you ever want to do a lap of Africa around the coast, good luck going around Somalia. But if you did want to do a lap of Africa, the border that you couldn't get across would be the border between Algeria and Morocco. You wouldn't be able to do it because the border's been closed for 40 years now, I think. It's been closed for a bloody long time. So you'd have to start in Morocco and end in Algeria. That would be the way to do a lap, and maybe just avoid Somalia. Got to the border, and this is my first big border crossing of Africa. I don't need a visa to get into Morocco. Obviously, you can just get on the boat across from Spain, no problem. And so I get to the border, and I have my Lonely Planet guidebook, and it tells me that if I get to the border, I can buy a visa for like $20. And so I'm okay. Can I get a visa? And they're like, "No, no visa here." And I'm like, "What? Like Rabat?" And I'm like, "What? Thanks, Nick. It is a good T-shirt. Yeah, Star Wars." I'm like, "What? Hang on. I've got to go back to Rabat. That's 2,000 kilometers north of here, through the Sahara Desert." And they're like, "Yep, go to Rabat, get yourself a visa, come back here." I'm like, "Oh my God." So you do what you got to do. I get back into a shared taxi to the nearest town across the border, which is a few hours away. Then get on the bus that goes all the way up to Rabat. And I get there, it takes a couple of days, and then I go to the embassy, and I put in my application. I come back the next day or the day after, and I get the visa, and it costs $25. And then I go all the way back down to the border, and I turn up. And the thing is, with the border between Western Sahara and Mauritania, it's a bit like Mad Max in that it's a big desert, and there's loads of like burnt out cars and trucks that are all upside down in the desert, rusting away. And there's a path that you've got to take, a track that you've got to take through the soft sand. And if you deviate from that track, there's a chance that you might drive over a landmine because the area is mined. So there's all like notices everywhere saying, "Oh, don't wander off in no man's land because you get in trouble." So you've got to sort of bounce through the desert for about half an hour. It seemed like that anyway. And the first time I went across with a guy called Adam Hussein. And then the second time I went across with a guy called Michel, who was from France, and he was driving a sort of minivan sort of thing, and he had some stuff that he was bringing down to Mauritania. I think he was taking it down to Senegal, and he said, I'd do this run a lot, he said. And I said, "Have you got a visa?" He goes, "Oh no, you don't need one, just get them on the border." So I'm like, okay, great, bouncing along. And we get to the thing, and I said to him, I was here last week and you couldn't get a visa on the border. And he's like, "Oh no, don't worry about it. They change the rules all the time." And I'm like, "I'm pretty sure they said there was no way of getting a visa." So we turn up, and basically I show them my visa that I paid $25 for, and they're like, "Yep, that's fine." And then Michelle says, "I'd like to buy a visa, please." And they go, "Yeah, no problem." And his visa only cost $20, which really pissed me off because I was like, how? So I got on a round trip of 4,000 kilometers through the Sahara Desert up to Rabat, down again to get this bloody visa. And that was my first proper border entry of Africa. And it all just got a little bit more difficult from then on. So if I remember right, you didn't need a visa for Senegal or Gambia or Mali. I did need a visa for Guinea-Bissau, which I managed to get in a nearby town in the Casamance province of Senegal. Mali, I didn't need a visa. And then I did need a visa for Guinea. And that visa, my dad had got it for me in London. So it was in my passport already. But because I ended up going to Cape Verde and getting put in jail for a week and then spending 6 weeks trying to get out of Cape Verde, all my visas that were in my passport were starting to run out because you have a limited window to actually use the damn things. So what I did was, happily, the date wasn't printed; it was just written in biro. So I changed it. I changed a 2 to a 3 or something like that, and basically changed the date in the passport stamp so I could get over the border. But crossed the border into Guinea, thinking, "Phew, wow, got through with that fake bloody visa I had in my passport. That was lucky." And then I only walked a little bit down the road, and I got my video camera out, and I was filming myself talking about my experience crossing the border, when some guy runs over to me going, "Wah, wah, 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 wah," like this, about me filming him. And I said, no, I'm filming myself. And I showed him the footage that I got of just my face basically taking up the whole camera because my arm isn't that long. And he's like, "Blah, blah, blah, blah," and he goes and gets the police, and the police come over and they take me back to the entry post, the border post. And I'm like, "Oh my God, okay, whatever. What's up?" And he's like, "Oh, you shouldn't be filming at the border." And I'm like, I was filming myself. Look, here's the footage showing it. And there's no footage of the border. I wasn't filming you. I wasn't filming this guy. I was just by the... Anyway, so got into trouble. The guy basically the police wanted a load of money. And luckily, there was a guy wearing a Liverpool shirt, and they saw my passport. I was born in Liverpool, and they basically let me off because they wanted to talk about football with me. And this is why, even if you're not that into football, if you're traveling, you should try and know a little bit about it, so you can just sort of do a little bit more than smile and nod when people go, "Yeah, football, Steven Gerrard," and I'm like, and then between those two incidences, like I said, I went to Cape Verde. I turned up on a fishing boat with Senegalese fishermen because I'm an idiot. And I'd grown up in Europe. I thought you could just turn up in places and it wasn't that big a deal. But of course it's a big deal in other countries because they're very, very zealous about their borders. And I saw this when I was traveling through Mali with a guy who was from Ghana. And because he wasn't a francophone African, he was an anglophone African, even though he was supposed to be able to move freely around the trade area of the ECOWAS area of West Africa. He got stopped everywhere. They'd single him out on the bus and give him even more shit than they gave me. And I was like the only European on the bus. And he's like, oh, and I said to him, doesn't this get you, doesn't it sort of get you down? He said, oh, I'm just used to it. And do you know what? We do the same thing to the francophones who come to Ghana. And I'm like, bloody hell. There's these artificial borders that have been made between these countries by the European powers are still causing strife today as a result. But then, okay, so I'm in Guinea. A nightmare journey, absolute nightmare journey through Guinea. 2 days in a set plus, which is a 7-seater taxi. And there were 16 people in the taxi. I shared the front seat with another guy, and he had, and obviously it's left-hand drive, so I'm on the right seat. And the guy next to me is basically taking up most of the seat. So I've got one bum cheek on the seat, and the other one is on the handbrake, bumping down a dirt track for 2 days. Anyway, we arrive at the capital, Conakry, and what happens? The police pull us over. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and they say, right, you've got to pay a fine because there were two of you sitting on the front seat. But at this point, we'd already gone through about 170 checkpoints up to that point. Checkpoint in West Africa is usually a bit of rope or string across the road with some tin cans attached to it. And when something comes along, they pull up the rope and they have to stop, and then they give the guys at the side of the road some money, and then they lower the tin cans, and then they drive on. And so, yeah, great. Basically, get to the capital, and these police are like, "We're going to give you a fine." And I'm like, "Well, what for?" They're like, "Because you had two people sitting in the front seat." And what? We've been all this way, and no one said anything that it was a problem. And they say, "Right, you need to pay the fine to me, or you're all going to spend the night in the jail cell." One of there were two women there. One of them had a baby, and the other one had a baby and was pregnant. And I was like, what? So eventually I said, well, how much is the fine? And they were like, how much have you got? So they took all of my guinea francs out of my wallet, all of them. Just went, yeah, that's the fine, bye. And then just left me in Conakry at like 2 o'clock in the morning. Nowhere to go and no money. Yeah. So these are the experiences that you have in countries where they make it very difficult to travel around, to get around, to cross borders. The next country I needed to get to was Sierra Leone, which was fine. Didn't need a visa for that, I don't think. But then I did need a visa for Liberia. I did need a visa for Cote d'Ivoire. I did need a visa for Ghana. I didn't need a visa for Togo and Benin and Burkina Faso, but I did need a visa for Nigeria, and it had ran out and it was printed, so it was a bit of a thing whether I'd actually get through or not. But because I paid the guy at the border a little bit more money, I managed to get through. Oh man. And then this is just one example of areas of the world that it's not so easy to just have freedom of movement, and it makes you really, really appreciate freedom of movement, because Europe is an outlier for the rest of the world. There's no other major region of the world where it's so easy. There's no Schengen in these other places where you can just get one visa and it allows you to go to 20 countries? Oh my God, that's amazing. But we just take it for granted. We've grown up with it. We've lived with it for the last few decades. We just think, yeah, this is perfectly normal. It's not normal. The rest of the world doesn't operate like that. The rest of the world makes it difficult. I go to Nigeria, and I'm talking to the guy I'm staying with in Lagos, and he was from Ghana. And I said to him, why do they make it so difficult to get a visa for Ghana and for Nigeria for British people who want to come here on holiday? I'm not here to work. I'm not going to be taking work away from someone who's Nigerian or someone who's Ghanaian. And he said, will you make it difficult for us? So, reciprocal. And I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So the more difficult we make it for other countries to come to our country, the more difficult they're going to make it for us to go to their country. But obviously we don't realize this because There's only a handful of crazy dickheads like myself who are willing to put themselves through traveling through West Africa on their own. Or, coming to my next area of the world, Central Africa. And there's this great line by a female traveler, or I think she was a diplomat or something, from the 1930s. And she was talking about Central Africa, which at the time was called Turkestan. And she said, traveling through forbidden Turkestan without the correct papers, I would sooner dine with the devil and his mother-in-law in hell. And this is what it's like. Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, in Iran, they are so difficult to get into. You can't just turn up. I mean, obviously, things have maybe got a bit better in the last few years, but the hoops they make you jump through. And there's lots of countries like, I know at the time, Turkmenistan was like this, and Angola was like this in Africa. You had to get a letter of invitation. It wasn't enough to go to the embassy in a neighbouring country. You couldn't do that. You had to go to the embassy in London, which meant I had to have 2 passports, so I could send one back to the UK, so my parents could put the visa in my passport and send it back to me so I could continue traveling, okay? But you don't just do that. You need a letter of invitation. In Saudi Arabia, you need a letter of invitation. I think you need 2. I think you need one off a company saying that they're sponsoring you to go there, to travel, you know, to visit. Obviously, I think they've made it a little bit easier in recent years, but because that's the way the world is going. But at the same time, I'm looking at this going, oh my God, this is crazy. Now, a couple of years ago, I went on this trip around Europe, and I tried to go to every country in Europe, 50 countries in Europe, in 3 weeks, and set a new Guinness World Record. I managed to do it, except Guinness turned around and said, Turkey and Cyprus are not in Europe. And you went to Turkey and Cyprus because I went from Iceland to Cyprus. That was the journey via Malta. And yeah, they said, no, you didn't need to go to Turkey and Cyprus. So well, take those days off. 19 days. I went to all the other countries in Europe in 19 days. And they went, yeah, we're going to make the record 18 days for someone to be. Anyway, but on the journey, obviously, I had my British roaming because this was the summer of free roaming. So in April, I think, 2017, they changed the rules, or they forced the mobile phone companies in order so that anyone in the EU would have roaming permission around the EU. They couldn't charge these extortionate rates for you to use your phone, but it was only in EU countries. So what was interesting is I was traveling in summer of 2017, and as I'm traveling, I'm going to places like Angola, which isn't part of the EU. Suddenly I get a message saying your data is £5 per megabyte. That's like a photo. That's a photo. It's like going on someone's fucking Facebook feed and just going once up, and that's it. That's a megabyte right there. There you go. £5, please. Try streaming something. Yeah, good luck with that. Get this bill. And obviously the EU brought in laws that said you can't charge roaming charges around the EU, and also you can't charge more than 50 quid, or the equivalent in euros, for someone using their phone in another country. All right, am I back? Am I back? Do I have sound? Do I have sound now? Sorry, my phone turned itself off. I keep forgetting I've got to touch it every now and again. Whew. Okay, all right. What where was I up to? Can someone let me know where I was up to before my bloody phone turns? You can't turn off the thing that turns the phone off after 10 minutes. Your screen off. It's really annoying. Do you know what? I've put a thing on this to say that you can't put another message up within 60 seconds of putting a message up to try and limit the number of messages that are coming through, because I'm finding it hard to respond to them all. 5 minutes ago, roaming charges. Oh, okay. All right. So back on, because we were talking about roaming charges. Hello, Plum Duff. Hello. I'm going to keep my finger on my bloody phone so that doesn't happen again. Okay, so for everyone watching this on catch up, I'm very sorry that the last 5 minutes didn't have any audio. Really need myself a sound engineer. If someone wants to be my producer for free, just get in touch. Do you know what? I've been yakking on now for 23 minutes and 22 seconds. I've had a beer here and I haven't drank any of it. Redundant Squash is saying starting again from now. Okay, so roaming charges, right? So I was just saying that in the EU, it's very different for us because we are used to being able to travel around. Roaming charges were abolished. We can just turn up in these places, and it's not like what it's like when you travel through most of the rest of the world, where they are very, very zealous about their borders. They're very important to them. Those border stamps are things that I'm sure the border guards probably make their wives and husbands sleep on the couch at night, and they just cuddle up to their stamps. Me stamp. They're very, very fond of them. I actually found that the more sort of insecure, maybe, I don't know if I could say that about a country, but the more insecure the country was, the bigger the passport stamps and the more passport stamps that had to put in your passport. Like, you enter some countries, you get 3 massive stamps in your passport, and when you're trying to conserve passport pages, because they are limited, it's a nightmare. You're like, can you just stamp in the thing? No, they won't fit. And there's like 1 for customs, 1 for checking your hair for lice, and 1 for like letting you in. And anyway, so Attila's saying nearly finished my first glass of wine. You're talking less than me, Attila. Come on, give me a break. So I'd moved on to talking about my American Esther. Okay, so I was saying that in Europe, people are saying, well, we might have to get an equivalent of an electronic travel authorization like you do for America or Canada or Australia. And that's fine because it'll only cost 15 quid and that's no problem. But it's 15 quid for 4 people in a family. That becomes 60 quid, which might be the price of the flight over there for one person through Ryanair or EasyJet or whatever. So, I mean, it might seem like pittance to someone who is born rich, but to the most of us, it's kind of just it's an insult that we've had these rights taken away. And I don't know if you hit this quote, but I was saying it's a bit like the song "Sit Down" by James, where he says, "If I hadn't seen such riches, I could live with being poor." And we have lived with the EU for the last few decades. And we're used to it. We think it's normal, but it's not normal. And now, if I ever want to go to America ever again, even to change flights in America, because I'm going somewhere else and there's no direct flight from the UK, so I'm going to change in America and then go to my destination, say Panama, I can't. I've got to go to the embassy in London. I have got to have an appointment at the embassy in London. And I have to pay £150 and have a meeting, sit down, and they have to interview me and make sure that I'm not a bad egg. And if they decide to let me, they will give me a visa. Now, if they decide not to give me a visa, it still costs me 150 quid. I don't get that money back. I don't get the money back for the cost it's cost me to get on the train down from, or more likely for me, the megabus down from Durham down to London. Or my accommodation in London. Okay, again, it's me. I'll probably just stay on a mate's couch. But the fact remains, to go to America, even if I'm just passing through now, is way, way more expensive for me than it used to be because I am banned from getting an ESTA for life. The reason why I'm banned for getting an ESTA for life is because in 2016, I applied for a new ESTA. I'd had two before, no problem. And then in 2016, they changed the things you had to tell them, essentially. So it had gone from just filling in your name and your passport number to they wanted to know your mum's maiden name and your father's name and or your inside leg measurement. And one of the things they wanted to know is which countries you'd been to in the last 5 years. And for me at the time, it was a bit kind of like a lot, but it specifically wants to know if you had been to Syria, Iran, Iraq, or Sudan in the last 5 years. At the time, 2016, I had been to Iran, Iraq, and Syria in 2010. So I was just outside the 5-year exclusion zone, which is great. Unfortunately, Sudan for me was a problem because I'd been there in 2012, in December of 2012, on my way back from South Sudan via Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, because the border between South Sudan and North Sudan isn't open. I'd passed through there for 3 days on the way up to Egypt. And so I declared this because I've had so many nightmare stories about people going to America and being put in jail for a speeding ticket that they didn't pay 17 years earlier, but it's still on the system, and they didn't pay the ticket and they left, and then they're put in jail, or maybe they were found with a bit of weed, and you've forgotten because it was like, oh my god, that was like 20 years ago. But you arrive at the airport, they check on the computer, nope, we're going to put you in jail, and what they've done is they've held people from other countries for months before they stand trial for like a misdemeanor offense. Honestly, this sort of thing happens, so I'm not gonna risk it. My Odyssey expedition was online, my blogs are online, and they could look me up, they could Google me. So I'm acutely aware of this. I'm like, okay, well, I'll declare that I was in Sudan for 3 days. Why were you there? I was transiting through. I was traveling from Ethiopia to Egypt, and they're supposed to get back to you within 72 hours about the ESTA. And then usually when I got the first two ESTAs, they come through straight away, no problem. And this one, I was waiting a day, I was waiting 2 days, I was waiting 3 days, nothing. And then I waited and waited and waited 6 days, and it was time for my flight to get home because I was flying home from Panama to the UK. There's no direct flights that do that, so I had to go via America or via Europe. But I got a flight that went via America, and I'm on the chicken bus on the way to the airport, essentially, bouncing along through the mountains on the jungle track, and I'm refreshing my phone to get this, to find out if I get this ESTA, because they won't let me on the plane unless I've got it. And eventually it comes through, and it says, application denied. No reason. Obviously, it was because of the Sudan thing, but no reason given. You need a visa. So I had to cancel my flight, and the flight was a cheapo flight. So basically, I didn't get a refund because all of the flights they did were via America. So I'd have to get a visa in order to take the flight. And I had to book a different flight via Amsterdam, and that's it now. And I thought, well, okay, I need a visa to go to America. And then a few months later, I was back in Panama, and my publisher, Jared Bendis, who might be watching this, my publisher of my amazing book, Man of the World, book 1 of the Odyssey Expedition. I'm working on book 2 at the moment. You should buy that; it's really good. You can get the audio version on my website for just a $5. Just saying, GrahamDavidHughes.com. Just saying. Thumbs up, thumbs up, and I'll keep your finger on the phone so the sound doesn't go off. Anyway, I look it up online. I go to the American embassy in London, whatever, and it says you don't need an ESTA if you are traveling overland from Mexico or from Canada. You don't need an ESTA. Oh, great. Okay. So I speak to Jared, and he lives in Cleveland, Ohio, and I say, listen, I'll fly into Toronto, right? We'll meet in the Niagara Falls, romantic, and we'll go into America together, and then we can work on typesetting and putting all the books together and stuff. I was planning to stay with Jared for a couple of days. So he meets me at the Rainbow Bridge. Sorry, not the Rainbow Falls, the Rainbow Bridge by the Niagara Falls, and we get through the Canadian side. They don't care. Get to the American side, and they pull me out, and they spend 3 hours interrogating me. They took a scan of my eyes. They wanted to know the pattern on my mobile phone, everything. And it was just like, oh my God, is this really happening? It's like 100 questions about everything in my life, and I was just like, look, and they couldn't understand what I did, which was really frustrating. And it wasn't until afterwards that Jared said to me, if someone asks you what you do in America, you want to say you're a freelancer, because they don't understand what self-employed means. And I'm like, oh, for God's sake. So, but basically they said no, and they said quite, gruffly, that I was never ever going to be able to get an ESTA to visit the United States or even transit for the United States for the rest of my life. So that's it. I'm just banned them on a blacklist for America. And this could happen with our trips to Europe. This is what I'm getting to, and it's taken me half an hour to get here because obviously you've got phone difficulties there. But if Europe decides, if the EU decides, the Schengen area decides to say, we are not going to allow criminals, people with criminal records, into Spain. That's it. If you've got a criminal record, they just won't let you in. And it's up to them to decide if that's something that they want to do. And we get no say in it. And so there are so many things that you can think of. Maybe they'll say, if you have points on your license, you can't come to Spain. I mean, they can. If they decide that they just don't like the places that you've been, maybe the EU takes a really big dislike to, I don't know, America, and says, right, you've been to America, mate. Sorry, you can't come in here anymore, which is what America did to me over Sudan. They can do that, and there's nothing we can do about it. And this is just for travel. Freedom of movement is way, way more than just travel. So I'm talking about the problems that it's going to cause with us going on holiday, which is just the tip of the iceberg, really, because no longer on January the 1st, no longer will we be able to go and live, work, draw a pension, get married, buy a house, start a company, build a house without the permission of the country that we go to. And those permissions can be quite high. In Panama, for instance, if you want to get a residency permit in your passport, you've got to have $5,000 in your bank account. And it can't just be dumped in there by a relative. They make sure that it's been in there for months before you can get your residency. They make it very difficult. Even getting a bank account in Panama is very, very difficult, because obviously they've had trouble over the years with drug dealers and everything else that's gone on in that part of the world, the Panama Papers, so that they're really strict on who can trade there, who can live there, who can open a bank account there, and who can retire there. And this is one of the things that we are giving up. And again, if we hadn't had all this stuff to start with, it wouldn't seem so normal to us, but it does seem normal to us that we have these things when obviously it isn't. Sean's saying 5K is hardly strict. He's richer than me, Sean. Phil Spicer saying, my wife being Dominican has Spanish relatives, and from January we'll be able to go to Spain with no visa or anything. I'll be the one needing to carefully consider travel to my own continent. And this is it. This is what we've done to ourselves. We have pulled ourselves out of not just the most successful trading bloc in the world, but the most democratic trading bloc in the world. There are dozens of trading blocs. There's a huge one that just started this week well, it's coming online eventually, but it's been agreed this week in the Pacific, and it includes China. There's no freedom of movement. No one's voting for anyone to represent them in that trade bloc. We did. We had over 70 directly elected representatives. in our trade bloc, saying, you know, we want to do what's best for Britain, and teaming up with other people from our bloc. And so we've lost all this stuff. We have lost so much, and we have gained nothing. There is not one single thing we've gained. It was announced today that we've got some kind of continuation deal with Canada. Canada's a tiny country. I know it's a big country geographically, but in terms of population, it's only 40 million. It's a small, it's small to middling country. We're a middling country, I guess, in the UK. Japan is twice the population of us. The America's much bigger. Brazil is much bigger. Nigeria is much bigger. Indonesia is much bigger. Russia's much bigger in terms of population. I mean, we're going, oh, wow, it's okay. Well, we've got this continuation agreement to just stand still. We're having to put these agreements in place to just stay where we are. And the way things are going now, I still have the thought that the EU won't allow Britain to leave without a deal. They just won't allow it because it's not in their interests. Not because they need us more than we need them, because that's bullshit, but just because they don't want a failed state on their doorstep. It's as simple as that. Xander said, Brexit is coming. People don't realise what it means. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Xander. People don't seem to get it. And to go from coming from someone who's travelled as much as I have, and I know I'm going to keep banging this drum and saying, please listen to me. It's absolute bloody madness that we have got all this stuff for bugger all. Even if it was 350 million a week, which it's not, it would still be a bargain for the 2 billion a week worth of trade that we do as a result of being a senior partner in one of the biggest biggest trading bloc in the world. Because yeah, if you can say that this trading bloc in the Pacific is bigger because it includes China, or you can say that the NAFTA trading bloc is bigger because it includes America. But there you've got one country that really, really dominates that bloc, whereas we don't have one country that completely dominates the EU. Obviously, now it's going to be Germany and France more than anyone else. But when we were a major partner of the EU, it was Britain and Germany and France. But it was all to the mutual benefit of everybody in the union. Darren says he's so looking forward to the first because he lives in a Farage lives near the Farage garage. I'm sorry. KG says the problem was only 30% of the electorate in the UK ever turned out to MEP elections. It's true. Most of those voting for the Brexit Party weren't interested in working with the other MEPs. Well, that's true. People voted for people who hated the European Union. They're quite happy to take the money and take the pension that they've got. You know, Nigel Farage, part of the 39 billion that we gave the EU in the divorce settlement, as most of it's been paid off by now, and no one talks about it anymore. It was a big thing, wasn't it? And Boris Johnson said they could go whistle. They can go whistle for that. Well, actually, no, we're paying it because it includes we're contracted to pay it. It includes the pensions for the likes of Farage, Claire Fox, the famous paedophile and terrorist defender Claire Fox, who's now a lord. What? Dancing with the arse in her face, what's her name? Anne Widdecombe. She'll get a pension. I mean, it won't be much because she only was in the job for 6 months and she only turned up to 2 debates. But and that was to just embarrass everyone in the UK. But they'll still get money for the rest of their lives. Right. Hungry January is going to come as a shock to them, says Sean. Yep, you're absolutely right. John Barleycorn saying the MEP elections were the only ones where my vote counted and I actually helped elect someone. That's very true because they were run by a version of this kind of matchup between first past the post and the PR system called the DuPont system. Is it DuPont or something like that? No, I'm calling it the wrong thing there. Someone's going to correct me. But yeah, it was this system where you voted for various parties and they would be allocated to areas depending on how many votes they got, but it wasn't necessarily that winner took all in each constituency like it is for the Hont system. Sorry, yeah, it was a much better system than the first past the post system that we have in the UK and that America has with the Electoral College, where if you get 50.0 of the vote, you get all the electors in that college, which seems a bit mad to me in that particular state. Plumduff is saying, I really, really hate David Cameron. Cheers to that. I hate David Cameron too. He got us into this mess and then he left. He just went, that's it. I've fucked everything. Bye. And he disappeared off into the sunset. Buddy says, get the feeling majority of Brexiteers, polite estimate, can't or not interested in traveling Europe. Fundamentally sad for the younger generation. No, I think they are interested in traveling to Europe, and they do. I mean, the number of people, especially in the older generation, who go there on holiday or want to retire there, and they've really, really shot themselves in the foot here because they're not going to be able to. There's things like not just the fact that unless you have residency, you're only going to be allowed to spend 180 days non-consecutive. I think it's 90 days at a time in EU countries. So you can't spend your whole year there. There's also going to be problems with getting your pension if you live in another country. And obviously, you're not going to be covered under the EHIC scheme. And as a result of that, it means that insurance is going to go up and you've got pre-existing conditions because you're retired and you're old and you've got problems. You're going to be stuffed. You're going to be really, really stuffed. Elizabeth Bennett says, 2 wars were fought with horrendous loss of life. Wasn't this to bring humanity together to prevent this again? Yes, it was. That's what the wars were fought to do. It was to preserve our way of life. And our way of life has been made so much better by our integration in with the other countries of Europe, to an extent where we surrendered some sovereignty. But of course, you always do that with any kind of deal with any other country. If you have a peace treaty with another country, you are surrendering some sovereignty. You're giving something to them. They're giving something to you. Our membership of NATO surrenders us sovereignty because it says that if one of the countries of NATO is invaded, we have to go to their support. We have to go and help them out. 22 of the 29 countries in NATO or in the EU. And so that just tells you who our allies are, the EU. But you join the UN, you surrender sovereignty because you sign up to the UN Declaration of Human Rights. And you can't really be putting children fleeing a war zone on a rock in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, Priti Patel. Phil Spicer says he has a Portuguese father, English mother. It's difficult for him to get UK citizenship. Can't believe it's still gender specific. Plumduff says we're all so much better than this. Yeah, well, I don't know if we're all better than this, but it's a sad state of affairs, put it that way. Simmy Sim said Cameron really fucked up. I hope history will remember that. Oh yes, history will. Sorry, pardon me. Johnny Nelson, do you think Brits are legally entitled to keep EU citizenship? No, they're not. It just doesn't work like that. And I'd love it. If the EU said to me, Graham, right, pay us £5 a week and you can keep your EU citizenship, I will pay it. I would pay it. No problem. It's like, yeah, I'll do that. And I'll keep my EU citizenship and I'll be able to keep my rights to travel around the EU. I wouldn't have any representation, which would be a bit shit, but the benefits that I will get by being an EU citizen will outweigh the £5 a week that I'll pay into it. Sugarfree saying, why are we allowed to allow this to happen? Advisory referendum, so many lies. We've allowed it to happen because of apathy, because of 30 years of media lies, because the Sun and the Mail and the Express and the Telegraph have all just spent the last 30 years telling lies about the EU, lies that originated through Boris Johnson, because he used to be the European correspondent, wasn't he, for one of them? I think it was the Telegraph. And he just used to make stuff up. He just used to make stuff up about bendy bananas and about the number of regulations that existed over cabbages and stuff. He just made stuff up because it was a humorous column. It was humorous. And eventually that turned into the keep the pound stuff. Yeah, we did. The secure our borders. Yep, we do. You have to show a passport or an ID card to come into Britain. Always have done. Try getting into Britain without a passport or an ID card. Not going to happen, mate. Maybe you can set up on a beach in the middle of the night, Farage there with the camera going, look at these bastards. All the stuff that we were promised isn't going to happen. Even the fishermen are freaking out now because they're realizing they're going to get shafted with the rest of the country. Yeah, and even if the fish thing was great and suddenly we got control of all our fish, as John Redwood wants, we can control our fish, like little remote controls for controlling all these fish to make sure they swim in the right areas of the British Isles. Even if that was the case, the entire British fishing industry put together doesn't bring in that much money for Britain. I mean, it's less than 0.1% of our GDP. I think Harrods brings in more money to the British coffers than the entire, in terms of trade, than the entire fishing industry put together, which is crazy. Simmy Sim saying Finland gave residence status to all UK citizens last year. For Finns in the UK, they have to apply for residency and pay for it. Yeah, again, absolutely disgraceful. Settled status. I could do a whole video on that. I need to get Cozy with me actually because she's brilliant on all this stuff with the people left in limbo and the settled status situation. It's just ridiculous that the hoops that people are being forced to jump through. People who have lived in this country for 40 years, who are old. There's old couple where they're married and one of them has dementia and they just can't get this stuff through because they have to do it themselves, and it's hard to do it on behalf of somebody else. And it's just the whole thing is just horrible. It's just a horrible thing to put people through. All this uncertainty, all this stress that they're putting on us. And these motherfuckers, it's all the same ones, isn't it? Who are saying, oh, I'm anti-lockdown. Oh, I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not wearing a mask. It's an infringement of my freedom of movement. And I'm like, oh, you're suddenly into freedom of movement now? Because for the last 4 years, you've been going on about how freedom of movement was an awful thing and you couldn't wait to get rid of it. Oh, mental health. What about the mental health of people being stuck in the house all day? What about the mental health of people going through fucking Brexit? What about the mental health of the EU citizens, the 3 million EU citizens, and the 5 million Brits living in the EU that are now, they don't know what's going to happen next. They haven't been given any clear, succinct advice on what's going to happen next. They don't know if they're going to be told to leave the country at some point because the government just changes its fucking mind. Like Idi Amin did with Indian people who lived in Uganda. Right, you've got 24 hours and get out the country. And I wouldn't put that past Priti Patel. I wouldn't put anything past Priti Patel. That woman eats children. If you came in to a room and you saw Priti Patel eating a child, you wouldn't be surprised. You'd call the police, but you wouldn't go, oh, wow, that's really massively out of character. If you saw David Attenborough eating a child, you'd be like, oh, my God, what the hell? But Priti Patel, you'd be like, yeah, figures. I'm going to go back to some of the messages here. Alex is saying he's embarrassed to be British. I think Paul Duff said that as well. Yeah. I think I'm embarrassed to be English. I don't think being British is going to be an option much longer. In the same way that no one says, where are you from? And they say, I am from the island of Hispaniola. No one says that. They say, I'm from Dominican Republic or Haiti, because no one calls it by the name of the island. Yeah, I think that's the situation we're going to find ourselves in. But yeah, I am embarrassed. I had a mix on before when I was cooking dinner, and This Is How It Feels by the Inspiral Carpets came on, and I thought this is the theme tune to next year. This is how it feels to be lonely. This is how it feels to be small. This is how it feels when your word means nothing at all. And like you couldn't sum up what we've done to ourselves more succinctly than that. In fewer words, get across the madness of it all. We have made ourselves absolutely isolated on the world stage. We haven't got our busy mate Trump there, pushing forward for the populist cause. He's on his way out. He's circling the drain. And we've pissed off all of our close neighbours. We've cost them an absolute fortune. Bad neighbours. What are bad neighbours like, eh? That's one of the biggest problems in countries around the world that have faced instability. They've got bad neighbours. You look at Afghanistan, it's surrounded by Iran, by Pakistan, by Tajikistan, by Turkmenistan. I mean, what do you expect? What do you expect? It's like these things are never localized. If you do something as devastating as Brexit and then foist it on a continent, it's not just going to affect your little island and your little bit of the other island. It's going to affect everyone around you for decades to come, and it's going to cost them a fortune. And they know this. It's already cost the French billions. It's cost the Dutch billions. It's cost the Belgians billions, having to deal with the shit that has been dumped on them by Britain, saying we're going to leave this. We're not happy. You know, after 20 years of being the most awkward bastard in the world, they're like, oh, we want to have a single market. Okay, you can have a single market. Oh, we want a rebase. We don't want to pay as much as the rest of them. Okay, you can have a rebase. We want to expand. We want to expand. What? Are you sure? Yeah, we want to expand aggressively. So we take in all the old Soviet Union states that'll join us. Also the states behind the Iron Curtain, like Romania, Bulgaria. Let's get them as well. Get them on board. More customers, more people, more consumers. Let's do it. Okay, all right, yeah, that's what you want to do. Single market expansion, fine. We don't want the euro. Okay, you don't have to have the euro. Just we want to control our own borders. Okay, yep, you can control your own borders. You can make sure that everyone coming across the border has to have a passport. You're not part of Schengen. Don't worry about it. Okay, but we want to make sure that we can send people back if they're not working and they're not, you know, they've got no money. Okay, you can do that. You can literally send people back to their country if they're in your country for too long and they're not supporting themselves. You can send them, you can deport them. What else do you want? I want to feel special. Oh my God. Really? What do you want? A participation certificate? Isn't that the thing that the older generation mock the young about? Oh, participation certificates, snowflakes. Oh, always whining about stuff. Always whining, are we? Right, okay, yeah. But yeah, given all this stuff, and it still wasn't enough. What a privileged, egotistical, entitled little shit of a country Britain is. To the rest of the world, that's the way they're looking at us. They're like, oh my God. Can you check out the exceptionalism on these guys? Can you believe this? And the feeling I got when I traveled around Europe in 2017, and the couple of times I've been back since then, it's just been kind of a mixture of bemusement and pity. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And there was when I went to Geneva, one of the guys I spoke to in Geneva, and I can't say who, he just said, "You're fucked." They were the words I couldn't believe, because he's quite high up. He's a bit of an official, you know, in Geneva. And he said, "You're fucked, and that you have no idea how fucked you are." I was like, bloody hell. And it's just off the charts. I mean, one of the things that I came back from Geneva, that's like really kind of mortified about, where I was like, oh my God, was the fact that we're going to get sued, because all these countries, which is already happening, all these countries that have been financially injured by the United Kingdom's decision to leave the EU, isn't just the EU countries, it's also Australia and New Zealand, who have lamb quotas to the EU. They don't have lamb quotas to us. So what do we do now? Do they have half their lamb goes to the EU? Well, at the moment, we buy most of the quota of lamb. If they give us a bigger quota than the EU, then that strangles their potential to sell in the EU with their lamb. And obviously, because it's a Southern Hemisphere country, it's good timing. It means you can get lamb all through the year instead of it being seasonal, like it would be if it was just coming from Northern Hemisphere countries, because lambs are only born in bloody spring, all right? Yeah, calm and relax. So Charlie Nelson saying, Sugarfee saying might happen in time. Phil Spicer saying, if people want sovereign isolation, can't we send them off to Mars with Elon? Could give them some Union flags. We're going to tell them we're going to colonize. I thought I said Elton for a second. We'll send them to Mars, you know, Rocket Man. Well, you know, it's no place to raise the kids. But no, it's with Elon. But send off the Etonians. Yeah, so if you've been to Eton, you go off with Elon to join Elton on Mars, please. TV blames everything on so-called benefit scroungers, not a word on multinationals dodging tax. Great point plumbed up. And I remember this must be about, 15 years ago now or something. There was a big news story splashed across the front of one of these tabloid rags. It was probably the Mail. And it was like, it was about this woman who had 7 children, and she was claiming £11,000 a year because she got child benefit for these children, and she didn't have a job, except maybe her job was, I don't know, looking after the children, because if you look after other people's children, you get paid for that shit. If you look after your own children, you don't get paid for that shit. In fact, you're looked down on for not having a proper job. So what you want to do, if you don't have a job, knock on your neighbour's door, say, I'll look after your kids, swap your kids with their kids, and then it's all fine. You're doing a job then. You're doing exactly the same fucking job as you are looking after your own kids, or doing your own dishes, or mowing your own lawn, or painting your own walls. But it's a job. You see the difference? You're doing it in a different house. In the house, it's not your kids, it's someone else's kids. You're getting paid for that. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, because that's the way we think in our country. We don't see housework as work. It's not real work, unless you're doing it for someone else, and then it magically becomes work. Anyway, this woman, she was getting thousands of pounds a year, at least £7.50 a day off the bloody taxpayer for not having a job. Continued on pages 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then on the left column on the newspaper, just a little tiny bit slither down the side, Gary Barlow has to pay £19.2 million tax bill that he has dodged. And that woman could go on to have 743 children in a lifetime and still come nowhere near to costing the taxpayer as much as Gary Barlow cost it by not paying his fucking tax. But single mother, how dare she? If you pick up a copy of the Daily Mail from 100 years ago, they are blaming everything that ever went wrong on single mothers and immigrants, or foreigners, people from other countries. And here we are 100 years later, and nothing has changed. Absolutely nothing. We've had another world war since then. We've had the Suez Crisis. We've had the Beatles. We've had the Sex Pistols. We've had Margaret Thatcher. We joined the EU. We left the EU. Doesn't matter. Still the same problem since the beginning of time. Pick on the foreigners. Pick on the single mothers, because they're the problem in society, not the woman who has been found to have bullied civil servants, one to the point of suicide, and gets away with it. Not only does she get away with it, the person who compiled the report, so Alex Allen, resigns. He loses his job, and I think that's dismissive. Constructive dismissal, which is what the civil servants who accused her of bullying in 3 different departments, and they got these little MPs getting online going, oh, but she's always been nice to me. She's always been nice to me. And it's like, okay, so this is something that she can control then. And not one of the people who has risen up to defend her has been someone who's worked under her. They've all been other people who don't work with her. And the excuse of she's never been shit to me is as insane and mad-headed as saying Harold Shipman never killed anyone in front of me, and therefore he must be innocent. That's why we have courts and evidence and stuff like that, because it's not just based on your personal fucking experience of that person when they do something wrong. Someone's just pointed out, Simi Sims just points out, Boris has several single mothers. Yes. Boris has 6 or 7 children. We don't know. Wikipedia doesn't know. Nobody knows. Boris Johnson, the Westminster sex pest. Oh, well, I suppose that's Mark Fonz. I suppose there's a lot of them, actually. This guy who cheated on his wife when she was undergoing treatment for cancer. That's the moral compass of that man. Cheated on his wife when she was undergoing treatment for cancer. And he left his wife for this dickhead Dolly Bird lady, Princess Ha, whatever her name is. And he's cheating on her with Flag Woman. Then he's cheating on her with some violinist. She kicks off about it. neighbours complain to the police about all the noise. That's the neighbours' fault. Why are you being nosy neighbours, eh? Why are you reporting on good old Boris doing his Borisy things? Man, whoa. Yeah. Time, people. Darren's calling time. Graham, please get involved, UK politics, and join a party. Taki, I can't. Basically, well, I the other day I dramatically cut up my Labour Party card, but they don't want me in Labour. I'm too outspoken. I swear too much. I'm really not. And I didn't go to private school. So you got two choices. If you went to private school, you can be a bit of a maverick. If you didn't go to private school, you have to be very, very, very straight-laced and a bit of a bootlicker, and I'm neither of those things. So, problem. I went to apply to stand for the Liberal Democrats, and I failed that test so miserably. It was possibly... I've failed in a few things in my life, quite a few things. Not least trying to go to every country in Europe without flying in to get a Guinness World Record. But yeah, actually there's quite a few things I've failed in life. But this one was the one that really stuck in my craw because I went for this interview with the Liberal Democrats and I just came away with the worst possible results. I think it was like if you'd done an exam and you get like an E or a U. I got a U. And one of the things that he said I needed to improve was my resilience. My resilience. I spent a week in a jail, not just in Cape Verde, but I spent a week in jail in Congo on my own, in a jail cell with no food. And then I just got up, put my hat on and continued traveling. And I need to work on my resilience, apparently. So that leaves them. The Greens are never going into power. And again, it's a bit of a closed shop for privately educated. So the Lib Dems, Leone Moran, Ed Davey, both privately educated. With the Greens, Caroline Lucas, I love her, but privately educated. Jonathan Bartley, privately educated. Natalie Bennett, privately educated. Do you see a pattern emerging here? So it's a bit of a closed shop. If you want to get into politics in Britain, at the moment, you really have to have gone to the right school, and I didn't. Oh well, shit happens. So no, sorry. This is why I kind of want to go to Scotland to join the SNP because they're a bit more of a meritocracy. Okay, right, I'm getting off. Darren Christiansen saying, "Have you seen Roadkill on BBC?" Yes, I have. It's very good. Okay, listen, I've got to get going because it's been past an hour now. I've given up saying these are going to be half an hour. I think I'm just so don't mention the second time with BJ. I've got to get going. So thank you so much. Thanks for all of your messages. Sorry I didn't get to read all of them. I read some of them as I was talking. It's hard to multitask. If before you go, you could give me a thumb up if you're logged in, and also I just let me see if I can just have a look here. Just give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second here. Patreon. Okay, so basically, I have a Patreon account, and I'm just going to mention this before I go, really, really quickly, because let's have a look. Right, great. So it is if you go to patreon.com. /that ginger scouser. Okay, that, not twat, but that ginger scouser. That'll be brilliant. And I've only got a few patrons at the moment. I completely forgot that I set this up. But what I'm planning to do once this finishes, because I'm finishing doing these at the end of lockdown, I will continue making videos like this where I'm interacting, but they'll be on more platforms. In order to put them on loads of different platforms at once, I need a little bit of money, not much, but a little bit of money coming in. So if you go to patreon.com /that ginger scouser, big thanks to Betty for both becoming my patron and also reminding me that it existed. I'm gonna go because everyone's saying good night. We'll see you tomorrow, and I'll try and say fewer words in more time. Okay. Good night, everyone. It's been grand, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.